Right. We do start with the Standard.
The Standard, which says that tough terms for 348 shut schools and over 300 schools whose boarding facilities were shuttered for failing to meet Ministry of Education safety standards were each given a report detailing specific gaps that must be satisfactorily addressed, failure to which Cabinet Secretary Julius Ogamba says they will remain shut. Details on page 4. Because he says, if somebody feels that you have closed that section without following the manual or unfairly, or where somebody or an inspector has not visited, the quickest thing to do is even go to court and get it opened. Quite a stern warning there for by the CS Julius Ogamba, and development heat as counties splurge funds on salaries. Oh, actually the Standard went with a different
angle on
the whole thing. West Pokot, 572.4 million on recurrent expenditure on development. Neil will be getting to more details on that. But let's look at what else the Standard is reporting. Ruto and governors defend a new medical equipment scheme. This is a story that actually has been followed by the dailies for this entire week, because President William Ruto held rather hours after the Health Ministry and Council of Governors dismissed Governor Mutahi Kahiga's claims that county chiefs were kept in the dark in procurement of leased medical equipment. The president lashed out at detractors, whom he said has hatched a scheme to create a wedge between him and governors to derail health scheme. Page 12. Stanley, looks like our health ministry, our health docket is always in shambles. There actually won't, there is always something happening with that docket.
It's very unhealthy. You remember us saying that even the Minister of Health headquarters just doesn't have a title deed. So
yes.
A lot is happening there.
And then now, still on health, unkept promises, why doctors plan the new strike again? I mean, strikes, chaos in the unhealthy health docket.
Yes.
It's a very, and of course the electricity system losses are up again, and then you can tell them about that thing.
Into matters sports now, how corner Kings Arsenal beat Manchester United. It's not one of those headlines that as a Manchester United fan, you want to read on a beautiful Friday morning like today.
Just sip on that coffee nicely. Yes. We'll be giving you more details.
Too bad. On the front page of on Daily Nation, now that story on matters governors and their spending, they don't have it on the front page of this paper, but then they tuck it all the way in page 16, and they say we can't spend what we don't have, governors say. According to the control of budget, recurrent expenditure by the 47 counties was 48.96 billion. But then, on the big story, SHA deals, Ruto fights back as queries mount. President William Ruto yesterday maintained that counties are not forced to sign onto a multi-billion shilling medical equipment scheme, even as the identity of 7 companies contracted to supply the kits remains a closely guarded secret between State House, Health Ministry, and a few county officials. The project has mimicked the biblical Tower of Babel as conflicting voices continue to throw confusion into fine details that will have allowed for public scrutiny of the contracts that counties will be tied for at least 7 years. And on the bottom there, matters education, Christmas bounty for public varsity lectures and workers as well. It is on the back page.
But it's an interesting story, Stanley, on the Daily Nation, and I want to just spend perhaps a minute extra. State now seeks 500 billion shillings diaspora bond to revamp JKIA after Adani exit. It is on page 6, and someone actually did the math for the government. You know, they actually said, Mr. President, Adani is gone. You want a solution for JKIA? So here's how it goes. Kenyans in the diaspora, so JKIA requires approximately 300 billion for revamp. Kenyans in the diaspora remit approximately 250 billion to their families each year. So if they were to dedicate the entire monies they remit to their families,
to
to this bond, diaspora bond, we have just about deficit of 50 billion to just do JKA alone.
Yes, now to revamp.
So you see, if they remit 250 and the JKA revamp requires 300, that's about 50 billion, which they can recoup from another bond. Okay, so then, and what this does, it creates a sense of, because these Kenyans in their diaspora, there are summer bunnies, as we call them. They will come and they will be able to see what their money is doing. And it creates the sense of entitlement to this country, patriotism, and ownership of government projects. So someone was actually saying, it's actually a Kenyan who we've hosted on TV47 before, Danson Mukile. He lives in Dallas, Texas. We met during the state visit, and he was giving these ideas because the diaspora community wants to see development back home, because in these countries they live in, they see how it works. And now on page 6, the state is exploring 500 billion shillings diaspora bond for JKA revamp after Adani exit. So 300 billion will be allocated to the airport plan, while 200 billion will go to another major infrastructure project.
Right. So we wait to see how that will.
We wait to see how that goes. Provided it's lucrative and they give a good interest rate on the bond, like the IF, because this must be, I think it will be an infrastructure bond, and it is tax-free on interest. And largely, really, accountability on that. Accountability on that. Back-to-back accountability, telling us this is how we are spending this money, and this is how we are spending. Do you know how the bonds work? So the highest amount is 20 million. So 20 million multiplied by 17% interest, you get 3.4 million on your 20 million annually. Right. And then at the end of this, say, investment period, that is 7 years or 10 years, you'll get your 20 million back. You get your principal back. So you make money. So it is double, it is win-win for everybody. Right. So it's a good plan, if well executed. Yes, and it takes us to the Tanzanian headline. Yes. Having our local billionaires as well. Because guys are making money out there, especially the Kenyan diaspora, the workforce. Into matters politics, I know you'll be discussing this on State of the Nation. Yes. Fresh trouble in ODM over pact with the president. Yeah, they are, you know, and then it's also reported that the Kenya Kwanza camp has issues because the ODM broad-based core members seem to be getting more and speaking more on behalf of, rather gaining more on this government, from this government. On Business Daily, I have a physical copy here as well. Yeah, Business Daily, it's talking about public servants spared tax on expense claims. So the number of employees in the public service, according to SRC, is just short of 1,992,900. And public servants, including members of parliament, will be exempted from paying tax on reimbursements for expenses incurred during official duties if President William Ruto assents to a new bill amid concerns about potential abuse by some officers. This is an interesting story. And Kilifi Investment Conference opens is what the Business Daily is also talking about. And there is also a conversation with William Ruto. They are calling it the boss talk, but not the president. Instead, it is William Ruto, the Kenya Ports Authority Managing Director, who actually, the reason you need to read that, he has downplayed the Dar es Salaam port competition, says it complements Mombasa. Okay. Yeah, it's a very interesting story on matters of regional development and, you know, especially on importation. Remember, President Ruto said there is that he is happy that Tanzania is overtaking Kenya. We want to see how, because shippers choose efficiency over most other things, and that is where the majority of cargo meant for Rwanda and copper exports from Zambia are handled at the Mombasa port. Because the Mombasa port serves the other landlocked countries and other neighbors. There is Uganda, there is the DRC sometimes, there is Zambia, Rwanda, all the way to Burundi and all that belt. And with Kenya and... Using that northern corridor. Yes. And with Kenya and Tanzania having port cities, there is that interesting healthy competition over business at the port. Right. Yes. So that's both stock there on Business Daily. Business Daily. Kwenye gazeti la Taifa Leo sema Ugonjwa Social Health Insurance Fund, kifo cha kodolea ugonjwa macho baada ya tovuti ya kuidhinisha huduma za upasuaji kukosa kufanya kazi. Ni gazeti la Taifa Leo, wakurugenzi. Baadhi ya wagonjwa wanaohitaji upasuaji walazimika kulipa pesa taslimu licha ya kuwa wanachama wa bima ya SHA, huku wengine wakiambiwa kujaribu baadaye mtandao wa SHA ukirekebishwa. So basically some patients are being forced to pay cash in advance. Remember how hospitals you have to pay a certain advance before you're either admitted or they administer some facilities or services to you. We wait to see how that conundrum of SHA goes about. The government is saying, just give us time, just give us time. Perhaps they're trying to build up the, premiums. Remember, we've started feeling that in our pay slips as well.
Oh, yes.
On that one, you don't want to have an opinion. Let's go to...
Yes, now, arguably, one of the biggest conversations for this day, 10 governors spent zero on development. This story is extensive on the Star as well as on People Daily. So before we get even to People Daily, they're calling it a crying shame. Nairobi and West Pokot feature on the list by the COB, Nyakango, a second time.
Stanley, can I tell you what
Control of budget there.
Yes, what we'll expect from here. Because, okay, so what the Control of Budget does, she raises a query in the Control of Budget report. So if you do not submit, say, receipts, and even the guests will tell us later on State of the Nation, including Mheshimiwa Lote, you submit receipts or you submit the records. If it does not show anything to do with the development, the COB raises a query. So you're supposed to respond to that query. You can be sure that all these 10 governors today and in the coming week, they will all say, we had this, it was not recorded, it was not captured. That's what they usually mostly say.
Okay.
But they are Kajiado, Nairobi, West Pokot, Uasin Gishu, Kisii, Baringo, Elgeyo Marakwet, Lamu, Tana River, and Nyandarua.
And so as you say, this particular receipt, so what the receipts that Nyakango had is on non-priority areas, including travel. Yes. Okay.
You will see. You will most likely see. They will come out to defend themselves.
As early as today.
As early as today. Okay. You watch out for that. Next week when you do this, you will see.
All right.
All over, defending themselves.
So something happening tomorrow, George, is the Football Kenya Federation presidential elections. Some weeks ago, the county elections happened and the delegates were chosen. So tomorrow, the 8 candidates for the Football Kenya Federation presidential elections is going to be happening at Kandenda House. And they say, be the judge. Here are the men and women seeking your mandate to lead FKF. Yes. And, and you'll see it in one of the cartoons, yes. Yeah,
and there is the ex-president Kibaki RPS Mwangi charged with 350 million shillings land fraud. And there is the Siasa, the pullout, 16-page political pullout, never-ending IEBC crisis. And also in Siasa, they tell us why Gachagua fueled Mt Kenya anger is unsustainable. Details in the Star. Smart people read the Star.
Independent, fresh, and different. On People Daily, well, I believe same conversations really, like on the Star.
Like on the Star, the 10 county chiefs, as I have told you, you wait for statements.
Yes. Other conversations, one similar to that one, Gachagua reject Mt Kenya MPs who backed my removal.
Yeah.
Former DP has launched an onslaught against leaders from his Mt Kenya region who backed his impeachment in Parliament in October, urging residents to reject them in future elections. So that is just a nutshell of what is on the Kenyan dailies. Let's take a look at the cartoons. And yes.
The shifting of goalposts. And you can see there is a gentleman in counter suits. You will know what that represents. There is this one. There is also that one with the famous hat.
Yes.
It's a
God Papa there.
God Papa.
As well as a counter suit.
Yes.
As well. Yes.
Yeah, a counter suit as well. And who is this doing press-ups?
Well, he's listening to the ground.
He's listening to the ground. This one is listening to the ground.
Yes. He's trying to listen to the ground.
Yeah.
But he's on the wrong side of the pitch because the goalposts have definitely been moved.
Yes.
It is the IBC circus. As George says, you can try and decipher who this gentlemen are. And on what I was telling you on the Star, so this is the Football Kenya Federation.
Okay.
That box on where you cast your ballot has actually been broken. So that again speaks largely. This gentleman is one of the presidential candidates. Now this is the current president, Nick Mwendwa, and it's a safe. Now this is Doris Petra. Okay. She's also one of the candidates. And now they're saying and suggesting that, she's being used as a puppet. Yes, and this is the famous McDonald Mariga. Yes. So something to ponder about for lovers of sports as well. We're going to be unpacking this from our sports desk on what this means. Back to matters politics and state of the nation.
State of the nation, executive holding on resources, and ODPP just staring, saying, because there is this, a gentleman says, will not interfere with other independent institutions, and the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions seemingly in awe of that statement, because the executive is still holding on to the resources. Who do you have here? It says Ruto and his pet. And there is ODM, which is the parrot, and it says, I had written in my manifesto that you will win. That's the reason I will not oppose anything you say. Food for thought right there.
Oh, yes.
Some very interesting caricatures this morning as we wind up this morning newspaper highlights.
Oh, yes. So even before you also tell us who's going to be on the panel, one gentleman who has been on the panel religiously on Morning Cafe for the longest time, a gentleman that I have personally interviewed. His name is Kamau. This gentleman passed away a few days ago, and his burial ceremony is today. Producer Mary tells me that she's going to be attending this. If you can have, just to remind our viewers who this gentleman is, and just to remember how
his life and moments.
Yes, and how he even shaped conversations actually prior to the general elections and even after, just giving us his views. If we could have that.